Hi and welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today I'm joined by Adriana Bankston. For close to a decade, Adriana Bankston has worked to nurture U.S. competitiveness in science and technology through a number of roles with universities, nonprofits, and scientific societies. This past year, Adriana served as the inaugural AAAS/ASGCT Congressional Policy Fellow, working for Congressman Bill Foster in the U.S. House of Representatives. While in Congress, she supported federal research funding and the STEM pipeline through a broad policy portfolio. Previously, she was a Principal Legislative Analyst with the University of California Federal Government Relations, where she advocated for the university's research priorities with Congress, the administration, and federal agencies. Adriana received the inaugural ARIS Emerging Broader Impacts Leader Award, the Sigma Xi Mantel Next Generation Women's Leadership Award, and the Top 20 in 2022 Award for Excellence in Advocacy from the Advocacy Association. Adriana earned her Ph.D. in Biochemistry, Cell and Developmental Biology from Emory University and her B.S. in Biological Sciences from Clemson University. It's good to see you again. You've been working in Congress for I forget how long, but we talked to you before you did your Congress thing and now after. So what's it been like to work in Congress during this time?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I think we spoke about a year ago probably when I was getting started. You know, in some ways it's been an unexpected time. No one really knew what was going to happen with the election, and definitely a few tough days as we were trying to kind of get our bearings to figure out what to do. But also, you know, I've been really inspired by the people I worked with, as far as, you know, really good public servants who are trying to help science. It's been silver lining of everything. I think that we're able to contribute a lot to helping support science during this time. So it's given me a lot more projects and I think opportunities to try to do something good while I was there.
That's great. I know when I was an intern in the first Trump administration in Congress, it was a lot different because, as you'll probably remember, President Trump back then didn't have any familiarity with how Congress worked, and he didn't get along with the Speaker of the House, who I think at the time was Paul Ryan. But this time he was a lot more organized, and he had Elon Musk, and he had a, I think, more organized legislative team. So there was a lot of legislation coming from him this time around. And it was just a lot of stuff happening.
So you were mentioning about like how fast things happened. I think that's part of the job day to day, trying to follow everything and keep up with it. So, but it's been very intense. Yeah.
Did you have the thing happening where like you went to work doing the work that you had set out to do for the day, and then Donald Trump announced an executive order, and then suddenly all of your work changed?
Yeah, at least part of it. Yeah, for sure. All the time pivoting. Yeah.
That was really, it was just incredible. And then everyone calls the office too, because a lot of people don't like the executive orders. I worked in I would say, fairly democratic stronghold in Maryland 6th District. That's where NIST is headquartered. They didn't really like anything that was happening at the time, but it made it very chaotic back then. So what was your day-to-day like?
Yeah, so I guess I want to give maybe a kind of overview for listeners what staffers actually do, and then I'll talk about the environment. Honestly, just trying to balance everything, kind of what are you supposed to do as a staffer, and then responding to the administration as part of that or in addition. But we introduced and also co-sponsored a number of bills, drafted letters, co-sponsored letters on science and research issues, also wrote questions for science committee hearings, which is interesting. Of course, held a number of constituent meetings on different topics, organized briefings with the Research and Development Caucus, wrote a lot of remarks and talking points. I'm under response to the administration. Members of Congress do a lot of speaking engagements. And then also related to that, floor speeches, interviews. Of course, as everything was sort of happening, they were reaching out for interviewing him for various outlets. Some of the work has been, you know, things that the office normally would do or priorities that he has. but then at the same time trying to fight all this. Definitely unprecedented to be a fellow there. I think it's not the first time, obviously, for them to work with the Trump administration. And luckily, other people knew a lot more about how to handle the situation. But also interesting, I guess, to be kind of in the middle of everything and contributing in real time. One thing, that's been hard to see is meeting with a lot of trainees, with folks from different institutions who would say that, they don't know what's going to happen to their future, whether early or later on in grad school. What can Congress do for them? And so we try to incorporate some of their concerns and talking points into appropriations and letters and speeches and those sorts of things to really hammer that, Congress is thinking about the future of science and what's happening with these folks. Like I said, it's led to more projects, both within the office and also in response. Like, for example, letters to the administration supporting NSF, more opportunities, I think, to make the case for science. Our work has doubled or tripled than probably what we would normally do, but also I feel like it was necessary to be there and try to at least make the case for what's happening.
So what was it like to be a person with a science background in Congress at a time when science was being defunded?
Yeah, I guess I'll keep this more on the positive side. I think we had to get really creative to figure out how to really show congressional support for science in a time like this, and being in the minority also. It's upsetting, to see everything happening, but also I think kind of using that as fuel to do more things, right? Write more speeches, introduce a bill. We can get to this, but we introduced the bipartisan resolution for NSF 75th anniversary, and a lot of stuff around that as far as, how do we keep explaining why these agencies are important, who the scientists are, and of course working for physicists, using that to our advantage. Like, how do we really make the case to explain the value of science, right, for this country and this time?
I know when you work for a member of Congress, a lot of your work is shaped by their priorities and sort of the way they view things. So what was it like working for one of the few scientist representatives in Congress?
I think it's interesting, I guess, to see how many people are calling about, even students saying, like, I'm a grad student, what can Congress do? I think, like, it just amped up the whole, situation, and he's known for supporting science for many years. And so like I said, we saw a lot more, students and like young scientists coming by and talking to him, asking him for some of that. And, they were very appreciative that, the member was there to listen. And it's interesting just to be in those meetings anyway. I think to your question, it's like, a balance of what the member cares about, what he's interested in. The staff, we do have a certain amount of influence in terms of the things that we would introduce or co-sponsor, or say this is a good letter to sign on to or not, or why not, and try to really hone in on signing all this science funding letters, for example. But then also, I think balancing needs of constituents who, as you know, we have 2 national labs in the district. We work closely with the university, so it was pretty closely tied to the scientific community and what their needs were. But then, of course, there's a lot of other things going on, right, that they deal with, and other issues to balance too. But then there's also the whole, how do you balance local things with national questions around science and responding to all the Trump things at the same time? So really, you have a million things, moving at any given time, right, as you know, because I know you've been there before.
Yeah, it feels like there's 9 million things happening, and then you're like I went to this briefing, I was like, why are they even doing this briefing? And then like 3 years later, they actually turned that briefing into an actual policy. Or like I'll see in the news that the technology that I briefed the member of Congress on is now part of the military. And it's like, whoa. One of the accomplishments of the Trump administration was actually taking funding away from science. So what was it like to try to fight that? And what did Representative Foster do? What was your role in that, if anything? I'm assuming that you had a significant role.
Let's see. Yeah, so I took over most of the science and research portfolio kind of when things started, going up in flames. So as a fellow, I guess my transition was sort of like, shadowing my mentor on a number of things, and then we kind of split up issues. And then as these things were happening, I was leading on a lot of the projects. So it's been nice to have that support, but also like be able to kind of push things that were important. And again, to me or to the member, kind of a combination, right? Things that he wanted to do and things that we thought should happen. Some of the legislation that we introduced probably would have done anyway, but interestingly, it was also bipartisan. Some of that was bipartisan. I think it's just maybe it made people pay more attention to science and what's happening to this country. Try to capitalize on that as far as speeches and interviews. Definitely a lot of that sort of thing, and then signing on to multiple letters that were circulating as far as funding all the different agencies, particular programs. Then, of course, having like students coming by and saying, okay, like the GRFP is cut in half, for example, right? And that was another thing. We did a speech on that. So I think we really try to listen to kind of what the people were saying about the impacts they were having. There are also some other smaller projects, like we supported the NIH Fellows United, which is a union. Trainees, did a union contract with NIH, trying to get better pay and childcare and other things. From my perspective, we did a good job honing on like the needs of scientists, right? And like especially young people, which was sort of a mix. Like it's not something he would say no to, but also I was driving a lot of that work to make sure that we're including their perspectives on all different projects.
So then, did you just wake up every day, go to work, and then just get way more work from what the Trump administration was doing?
I think that sounds accurate. Yeah. I think the other learning curve was seeing when we were, in session or out of session. If we had to introduce a bill, how do you do this when you're not in session, right? Stuff like that. And then there are certain things that had to happen before because, like I said, we did some projects around the NSF 75th anniversary, which is May 10th, I think. So there are a few things that were timed that had to happen kind of within the week from that date, and then everything else got pushed. Of course, Trump was also doing other things in the meantime, so always something going on.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the recent report from the Government Accountability Office, which is the independent watchdog of Congress, that said that in taking away some of the NIH grants, the Trump administration violated the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. Did you read that report?
I haven't seen that. We did meet with them at some point from a bill that I was working on. But I know they do a lot of science and tech work and different reports on the workforce. They had an event on the Hill at some point. So I don't know about that specific issue, but I know some of the staff there.
Okay, so then I have too many questions about what it was like to be in
this
Congress.
You can keep asking. Yeah.
So how many graduate students and researchers and people, maybe fired feds, reached out to you all?
We did meet with students doing the AAAS case workshop. I want to say that was in April, maybe. They sponsored trainees from different universities to come to Congress and do this Hill Day. I met with probably 5 different schools. Then, of course, like universities from Illinois, grad students that were calling from the state. I remember one day just having a random call from a grad student saying, I don't know what to do, basically. And of course, I said that he's known to support science more broadly. I don't think we had that many agency meetings. I think early on a few, and then when all these things were happening at NSF, we didn't meet with them, but we did meet with, I'm pretty sure, Department of Commerce and DOD. I know then when all the climate things happened, I think we had some meetings with EPA also. But the sorts of things happening obviously fluctuated based on what was going on. So, he participated in the Stand Up for Science rally. let's see, like I said, there was a lot of letters to support all the agency funding and opposing all the cuts and expressing dismay from members of Congress on all these firings happening agencies. So they had a bunch of you probably know this special order hours, where they basically do like an hour dedicated to a specific topic after legislative agenda is over. So they had two of those. I think one was NSF specific. The other one was just generally about funding cuts. So we spoke at both of those, and it's really interesting actually just to watch the whole thing and see how each member kind of emphasized different things under this umbrella. And people, would say thank you for organizing this and speaking out. There's also local things. I volunteered for a couple of town halls too. This is sort of a mix, but maybe people are interested in doing that locally. Just going to when their member has a town hall in their district. Those are really attended heavily, and too many questions you can cover in 1 hour. But a lot of these sorts of things came up where you can actually, call your member and ask about, what are they doing for science, whether it's like local or the office. The other things I think are sort of more specific things to the Foster portfolio and office as far as like supporting STEM workforce, different resolutions that have to do with encouraging investments in STEM and all of that, which are not related to Trump, but obviously all was intertwined at some point and too much happening.
So yeah, tell us about those. What did you accomplish with Representative Foster's office over this past, was it a year? Was it less than a year?
Yeah, 1 year. So we started pretty much like end of last September. Let's see. So I think I'm going to just share a few bipartisan things that have happened. Keep STEM Talent Act enables international STEM students to contribute to the workforce and also would give them permanent resident status. The idea is like they would have green cards if they're grad students coming from other places. This is something he's reintroduced, I think, multiple times. We did get a good number of Republicans and also endorsing organizations, probably more than we've had before, including a grad student group. We've been getting some outreach from that also, people trying to get more bipartisan support here. There are a number of resolutions. One of them that's interesting is the Pi Day, which is always fun. Basically designates March 14th as Pi Day, with the broad idea of helping support investments for math and science education and getting students interested in STEM. Again, one of sort of his signature bills, but always there's a lot of press around this one too. One interesting thing towards the end, like I mentioned, we did a bunch of briefings with the Research and Development Caucus, something for people to follow maybe. But we did one with the Federation of American Scientists on the science brain drain. How do we keep talent here? How do we lose the talent that's already left, and all of that? So it was really insightful discussion on that, and there's a blog out there too, summary on that one. So this is something that I'm really glad we did, because I think having heard from all these trainees and scientists saying this is what's happening, how do we get the word out more? And I felt like we needed to organize something to really talk about what's going on and how it's impacting the workforce and young scientists who are leaving now. So that was really useful. The other things, NSF, as I said, was a major focus due to the 75th anniversary. One of these 4 speeches at the Special Order Hour, why NSF matters, what they've done over the past 75 years, and again, honing in on how the administration did not support it. The NSF 75th anniversary resolution was introduced the same day when the floor speech happened. So that was really exciting, because able to say that, this is a bipartisan resolution, which is probably one of the few things that Republicans would support related to science and an agency specifically. And then we had the speech that night. So we're able to say that we introduced it, this is what happened, here's why NSF matters. And really it was an exciting day to hone in on that. And then finally, like I said, we submitted multiple letters, but 2 letters to the Trump administration expressing concern with firing NSF workers and the NSF funding cuts. Both of those were signed by a lot of folks. That's interesting, just having that experience of writing a letter from Congress to administration saying we're not happy with all the firings happening. So, and then having people sign on and having that sent out. So kind of a mix of specific projects around the research science workforce and then all this NSF work that was really impactful, and I think timely, and again, timed around the anniversary and doing a bunch of things there.
So what kind of scientist is Dr. Foster? Is it Dr.
Yes,
Foster?
Dr. Foster, yeah, physicist. He worked at Fermilab for 23 years, I think. And so that's also nice, right? That Fermi was in the district and always, proudly showing the building where he worked, the picture in the office.
Yeah, you gotta love the office decor. I don't remember exactly what we had in our office, but I went to Senator Mark Kelly's office when I was on the Hill last September, and he has like his whole space suit and everything.
Yeah, I think I saw that one time. But yeah, he's got the Argon and Fermi and large photos there, and some photos with NASA and other things. So you immediately can see this is a very science-focused office when you walk in there. Yeah.
So that's cool. So do you think his office is run differently because he's a scientist? Because, like a lot of offices, we didn't have a lot of scientists in our office. I didn't feel like we did. Maybe there's some people that had science majors. I did talk to not my representative, but another representative in Oklahoma, and their staffer had a neuroscience bachelor's. And I was like, oh, I have a neuroscience bachelor's. But do you think that his science background influenced the way that his office ran?
It's definitely, a major focus, which is probably not the case for a lot of members. And he's been on and off the science committee, and he was on it for part of the time I was there. So that was also interesting, getting to be in the hearings. I'm pretty sure he ran for Congress initially because he was like, I'm a scientist, but I want to do more. So this has been, I think, a major focus for him, which is limited, right? There's so many members of Congress, only some of them are doing something for this. And then, it's been nice to be able to get some folks on board on some of these things that were bipartisan and all the NSF projects and different things. So I guess it's probably made the experience a lot better, working for somebody obviously who's receptive and was happy to meet with students and hear them out and all of that, right? And playing a role in that. And also, I think I remember, there have been some of his physicist friends who stopped by there, and we staffed him for that meeting. So I did hear some of that. That's very unique. But yeah, I think walking into an office that is already supportive of the things you're interested in, right? And then it makes things a lot easier to write letters and speeches on those things because you're already well aligned.
So when you say you guys did all this stuff, did you actually write these speeches? Like, have you written any speeches for the congressman, and what speeches were they? And can we find them on C-SPAN?
Yeah, they're all on YouTube. Most of them are. So the two, like I said, 2 for Special Order Hour on NSF, and then just another broad one around funding cuts. Let's see, other speeches with the different briefings we did. So like I said, Federation of American Scientists, not all of them were recorded. So we did another one with the National Academies talking about university industry collaborations. I think that was recorded. Stand Up for Science Rally also is on YouTube. That's also something to watch, just to see all the folks who spoke there. So yeah, some of them are online. And yeah, I wrote a lot of them for House floor speeches, the rally, and then briefings and other events. That's the other thing to maybe mention, that because of everything happening, there have been a lot of receptions in Congress talking about the importance of science and NSF, like the CNSF Coalition. AIMBE organized an event.
What is AIMBE?
American Institutes for Medical and Biological Engineering. So they also broadly advocate for biomedical research. What else happened? So yeah, some CNSF, other things.
What is CNSF?
Coalition for National Science Funding. So they advocate for NSF funding. Yeah, I mentioned Stand Up for Science rally. There was also another event with the National Science Board and the Science and Technology Action Committee early on, when Trump first took office, I think, and so they decided to do an event inviting members to speak on it. So yeah, there's a lot of speeches. Not all of them are public or they're not out there, but a good number of them are on YouTube and or on C-SPAN.
I'll have to look some of those up and see if I can link them. So the congressman walks in and is like, Adriana, I'm going to speak at Stand Up for Science. Can you please write my speech? Or is it like that? He just walks up to you and tells you to do something?
So we, yes and no. We pretty much know kind of what's happening ahead of time, although not always with too much notice. Basically because, he gets invited to speak and then we know his calendar for the week and then sort of split up who's writing which ones. The rally actually happened sort of quickly. He was supposed to go out of town, so we convinced him to stay in town and do it and then go home after. But so yeah, we had a few days notice that he was doing this. Obviously that one, they had so many speakers, we didn't know exactly when it was going to be, so we hung around until his time came. And then other things, like for example, a lot of the briefings, we also organized or suggested to him to do something and then wrote the speech. Some of the stuff was like evening receptions where again we knew when it was happening, probably about a week before. So even though it seems like a long time, but when you have a million things going on, you do it kind of last minute too. So that's one thing, right? I guess you learn how to balance a lot of things and like do things fast. I think that's one thing. I've become more efficient with doing more things faster.
Yeah, that's one thing. I became way more efficient after I interned in Congress, and I also learned that, like, one day I was answering the phone and NASA called us, and I was like, I've never talked to NASA. I'm doing all this important stuff every day. It's just like I saw the former governor of Pennsylvania once, and I was like, I can't believe I'm in the same area as him. It's like the famous people that you see or people that are famous to you. You're like, wow, I'm around like so many influential people. That was
so
really stressful.
It's so interesting. So we, I can talk about Bill Nye because he spoke at the rally.
Oh, so I was looking up his district while you were talking, and it's like a little bit west of Chicago, kind of.
Yeah.
But he was in Washington, D.C. during Stand Up for Science, so I'm assuming he spoke at the Washington, D.C. rally.
Yeah, the DC one, yeah. So Bill Nye spoke right before him. And then I also met him. This is a good example of kind of random events on the Hill, but there's an event with the Planetary Society kind of around space policy. There was a letter circulating, which we also signed for space policy funding. I don't remember exactly all the details, but Bill Nye runs the organization. So they hung around, everyone took photos with him. So yeah, he said he knows my boss well. So anyway, they all know each other. But that's also one of the fun things is that, like you said, important people come to the Hill and you can go meet them at different events, right?
Yeah, I saw that a staffer from my senator, Senator Markwayne Mullen, actually met Bill Nye, and she was really excited as well. So it's like the love of science transcends partisan divides,
Yeah.
I feel like. You just talked about like several different things that you did. Which of these do you consider to be your greatest accomplishments?
Let's see. I think I'll go back to the Keep STEM Talent because that's something that has bipartisan support. It's tough in an environment like this, being the minority in a Republican House to try to get Republicans on things with the current political environment. it's nice to see that there is support on both sides for, foreign scientists, students, trainees who are here and want to stay, and how do we do that, and that we're still pushing for that to happen. Some of these resolutions are really nice, right? So we talked about like Pi Day, robotics. There's also a few kind of government specific bills to try to make a better government. Like I said, I'm really proud that we did this briefing also with Federation for American Scientists and the brain drain, because I just felt like people need to talk about this and get it out there, and invite Republican staffers to hear what's happening, and from trainees also. Speeches are good. I think that's just kind of interesting to be able to write a floor speech on what's happening to American science, and that's on C-SPAN. Some of these things are just kind of cool things to do that you get to do.
Yeah. That's always been my dream, to write a speech for some important policymaker. And I did give a speech at Stand Up for Science, Oklahoma City, and that was a dream realized. But giving a speech yourself and writing it, I'm not an important lawmaker. It just wasn't the same. There's something really cool about choosing the message that someone important saying, because it's a huge responsibility, and it also has a very large impact. Like, I don't know if anyone remembers the speech I gave in Oklahoma City at our state capitol, but it's different for a lawmaker. So what have you learned from your year in Congress?
Well, so one thing that's been nice as we're talking about these different projects is just how collaborative everything is. Being able to meet a lot of the staffers that work on science issues on both sides. Like I said, they did support some of these projects. Getting co-sponsorships for, bills or letters, right? And learning all of that ins and outs of how to introduce a bill, how to write a letter that goes from Congress to administration. I think broadly, I would say, gained a really good appreciation of kind of how public servants work and how much they work. There's just so much happening, right? I don't think I really realized much about public service before. Within the office, a big part of the reason why this year has gone so well and it's been such a good experience is because of the mentors that I had, leadership in the office who really try to give a good experience to the fellows, and people that have been there a long time and they know how things work and kind of quickly can pivot to help move things forward. And then I think just how much is happening, how much a member of Congress deals with at any given point, because I had sort of been on the other side of being an advocate, going to the Hill to advocate for research funding and all these sorts of things with different groups. I really had no idea what all the other things are that are happening and how much they have to balance, as we talked about, local, national issues. Being a scientist that is bombarded with these things because people know you for it and they expect you to give a speech, right? Things that you're interested in as a fellow, right? And so that's much appreciated to be able to have an input in the things that we do, and the things we talk about and write about, the bills that we introduce, and speeches, and really what the talking points are for different events, right? I think it's been important to be able to explain this, why science matter, why we should support the next generation. But really, no, I guess I just admire people doing this every day, because there's so much to do and balance and be able to really do good work. And he's a member that I think really cares about what he's doing and supporting science, but also that Congress is doing the right thing. So it's been just a good year to understand more about public service.
It's definitely been a very tough year for people with a science background or scientists. There weren't many science people when I worked in Congress. And by this, I mean, like, you walk around the building, you see people that are not scientists. Because, scientists are maybe this stereotypes scientists too much, but they're so introverted. They're not bubbly. They're very analytical. When you go to Society for Neuroscience conference, you see different people than you see if you walk into like Longworth House Office Building, which is where I worked. So are there more scientists there now?
Well, certainly the fellowship, I think we had 36 fellows this year. It's hard to know, I guess, the background of the staffers. And there's probably less than a dozen members who have some sort of STEM background, engineering or math or something else. So that would be interesting to see. I don't know as far as the staffers. I know some of the ones that have worked on science issues, they were on the science committee and then they went to an office or kind of moved up in that space. So, I mean, I think we do need more science expertise because a lot of folks don't really know, why science matters, or they're assigned the science portfolio and they're trying to figure things out. That's maybe part of the value of the fellowship is, having PhD scientists there who know what this is. Like they've done research, they've been in grad school, they know what it's like and why we should, fight for grad student issues, for example. So hopefully there'll be more. I mean, if anything, I think this moment hopefully taught us that science is important and we do need more experts to try to drive some of this policy.
And if we're not going to have the experts in the executive branch, we should definitely have them in the other branch that's a totally separate branch, the legislative branch. Yeah. The other thing I want to say was one of the few things that Congress and science had in common for me is everyone works way too much.
Yeah.
But the culture is so completely different. Just requires a different way of being and thinking when you're in Congress versus in a science lab. Okay, so what's next for you?
Yeah, still figuring that out. I'm hoping to continue doing something congressional, whether I stay, on the Hill or do some sort of advocacy, as I was doing before. Now I think I know so much more. Have different interviews, so I guess we'll let you know.
Yeah, and you announced on LinkedIn quite a while back, actually before your fellowship started in Congress, that you're writing a book. So when is that coming out? Do you have any updates on your book?
Still doing that. I didn't have a whole lot of time to write, although I think now I have material from this year.
You'll have pages and pages of stuff to write about.
Yeah. The book is on, broadly scientific research, kind of how does it work, how does it get funded, how do we support it, how do we advocate for it, and how scientists can get involved, and a bit of also funding mechanisms. How does government fund science? How do we do it better? How do we get involved? I did write a little bit before I started and sometimes on weekends. Probably it'll be at least a year from now, if not more, but we'll let you know.
That sounds cool. I'm excited to read your book when it comes out.
Oh, thank you.
So good luck with your interviews. I know you're super busy. It's exciting to catch up with you again after your congressional fellowship. And now we can both say we've worked in Congress as science people, so we should pat ourselves on the back, I guess. I'm patting myself on the back. If I could give you a hug, I would. Thank you for fighting for science in Congress, Adriana. That's really important. And I think a lot of scientists wish they could have been doing stuff like that, but that's why we're having this conversation. So hopefully more people will get interested and apply for these congressional fellowships too, and just learn about how Congress works.
Yeah, hope so.